Hello, I'm Chloe Tilley. Welcome to World Have Your Say. 3 women have been named as the winners of the Nobel Peace Prize, and it's bounced straight into the top trending topics worldwide on Twitter. They are President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Leymah Gbowee, a Liberian peace activist, and Ta-wukkul Karman, who's known as Yemen's mother of the revolution. All 3 have been recognised for their work to promote women's rights and peace. But is there something that women can bring to campaigning and peacemaking that men simply can't? And in a year when dictatorships have fallen in Egypt, Tunisia and Libya, and uprisings continuing elsewhere, is this enough of a nod to the Arab Spring? Wherever you are in the world, welcome to the Global Conversation. Well, welcome to the programme. We'll be speaking to some of you in Cairo, Tel Aviv and Dubai in a moment. But first, let's get a summary of the main news this hour. This year's Nobel Peace Prize, as we've been saying, has been won by 3 women, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Leymah Gbowee of Liberia and Ta-wukkul Karman of Yemen. It's recognition of their non-violent struggle for the safety of women and indeed women's rights. Forces loyal to the interim authorities in Libya are now in control of most of the city of Sirte after a major assault. The city had been the last significant stronghold of Colonel Gaddafi's supporters, but was attacked at dawn with an intense barrage of rockets and tank shells. The president of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, says his government and international forces have failed to provide security for the Afghan people. Speaking to the BBC 10 years after the Taliban government was overthrown, Mr. Karzai said the lack of security was one of his administration's biggest shortcomings. New figures show the US economy added 103,000 jobs in September, ahead of many economists' expectations. But the US unemployment rate is still above 9%. Analysts say the job figures remain weak because American businesses are pessimistic about the country's economic prospects and the debt crisis in Europe. The credit rating agency Moody's has downgraded 12 British banks because of a change in government policy, which makes a bailout less likely in a crisis. 9 Portuguese banks have also been downgraded over concerns about loans to their own government. Well, thank you for joining us here on World Have Your Say. I'll introduce you to a couple of guests who are with us for the next hour. Don't forget, if you want to get in touch with us, you can pick up the phone, call us country code 44 2070 83 72 72. If you are on Twitter, you can use the hashtag WHYS, and the conversation's already underway at facebook.com/World Have Your Say. Well, we're joined on the line by Yasmin, who is there in Cairo. Also, Alice Akoku from the advocacy group Women in Africa joins us here in London, and Lena is on Skype from Tel Aviv. Welcome all of you to World Have Your Say. Let's begin first of all with Yasmin in Cairo. What do you make of these 3 women being named as Nobel Peace Prize winners?
I think it's a great day for peaceful movements and for peaceful activists that you have 3 women that have been recognized for their contributions to the peaceful movement. So it's a great day for peaceful activism and for women together.
Do you think that it's enough of a nod to the Arab Spring? People talking about Egypt, about Tunisia, about Libya, about fundamental shifts in governments there, and yet a woman from Yemen has been honoured.
Well, when you're looking at the Arab Spring, I mean, well, the first thing that you have to notice is that in the Arab Spring, you have the Arab people have been wanting to join together since forever, or for a while. And so when you see the Arab Spring coming together, you're talking about the Arabs together. So one person's victory is everyone's victory, as we've seen with how the movements have gone from one country to another. And considering particularly with Yemen's case, with the president coming back recently and the extreme violence that has been seen, to have a woman who has been steadfast in her peaceful protest since the very beginning and continues, and to see this effort recognized, it's a great day for peaceful movement. I mean, they've stuck with their peaceful movement despite the amount of violence they faced, and also the fact that the population itself is heavily armed. So when you're talking about an Arab Spring, this is an Arab Spring. It's not the Egyptian or the Tunisian or the Libyan or the Yemeni. It's the Arab Spring. So one person's victory is everyone's victory.
Well, as you talk to us, Yasmin, we're seeing pictures from Yemen and Ta-wukkul Karman, who led many of the uprisings in Yemen and many of the protests. If you log onto YouTube, you'll see many videos of her involved there. Yasmin, let me introduce you to Leymah, who joins us on the line from Tel Aviv, actually is from Stockholm and works for a peace and conflict resolution group there. Leymah, what do you make of these three awards today?
No, I completely agree with Jasmine. It's embodies, you know, the fight for peace and democracy for women's rights activists all over the world. But let us not forget that it's also an award in their own right. They have made tremendous achievements, all of them, and I think it's fantastic that the Liberian women's peace movement is rewarded in this way, because they have, I think, their story, what they have achieved. They basically, pushed the warring parties in Liberia, the horrendous Liberian civil war, to the peace negotiating table, and they actually, physically locked them in when they couldn't agree and said, you can't come out until you sign this agreement. So, but as I said, it's a prize, an award in their own right.
Alice?
Yes, it's quite interesting. It's a wonderful day. It's a historical day for Africa, because the three women are African women. But one of the things that shows to us is that the time is now for women, because you look at Liberia in particular. I think Liberia was a huge test case in time, where the women themselves, it was the women that actually did what they brought peace. They succeeded where the UN failed. They succeeded where the African leaders failed. So therefore, I would have very much liked to see this opportunity highlighting more of what the women did to achieve peace. Because I believe that the president of Liberia was actually the creation of this Liberian peace women. And therefore, it is important that the women, the president should hold. I will recommend very strongly, I will suggest very strongly that the role that women are playing in the peace process in the world, which has not up till now been recognized, should...
So you think that women certainly do bring something different to the table. I'd like to get you all to respond to this tweet that we've had from Ekram in Cairo. So the Nobel Peace Prize was given for women's rights, but it's clear that peace won't flourish, seeing as women, one half of the society, still suffer from discrimination. Who wants to pick up on that?
If I may, there is no doubt that there is still a lot left to do, but I think that this sends a very clear signal that of the importance of what women can bring to the table. Let's not less than 10% of the peace agreements and have had women involved or as signatories. So there is still a lot left to do, and I think that, but this recognition, also sends some important signals. I am in Tel Aviv now, but I just come back from Gaza and from the West Bank. And of course, it's important, for instance, for the Middle East Quartet now also, if there is a new impetus and if there is a new incentive for the Middle East peace process to move forward. We haven't seen that yet, but of course it's very important that they listen to women's voices as well. And so I cannot, underline this enough, that they need to invite women, to the peace table.
Wherever you're watching us around the world, you're watching World Have Your Say. We're discussing the Nobel Peace Prize being awarded to three women. Do women provide something different in peacemaking opportunities? You can pick up the phone, you can call us, country code 44 20 70 83 72 72. Yasmin, you're in Cairo. I'd be interested, we saw so many women taking to the streets and playing a really instrumental role in the uprising there, yet there seems to be a real lack of women in the corridors of power.
That is true. I mean, when you look on the grounds, you see a lot of women that are actually taking action. So and have been pushing forward for the Arab Spring and for change and for the regime and for everything. And when you look at the political powers that are there now, you do see that there's a lack of women. And I think it's just an unsurety, even if you do have parties that have been pre-existing for at least a couple of decades, they still have resistance to change because there is the worry about changing and accepting more women. To them, it may not be the suitable time, which of course is very problematic because the time is now. There will never be a suitable time, it just has to happen. So yes, there are concerns that you don't see women taking up more in the political official arena, but at the same time you have a lot of women that are striving elsewhere, and I think the focus needs to go down back into the grassroots and see what these women have been done for the different movements since the uprising, and how they have been able to push forward despite all the obstacles that they face. So yes, women are discriminated against in certain things, but we can't always focus on the victimization of women, but actually on the triumphs of women to push forward beyond those stereotypes and those criteria and find a space where they can actually do what they want to do, which is survive and persevere and find change.
Well, Yasmin, Leymah and Alice, I want to introduce you to Fatima, who joins us on the line now from the Yemeni capital, Sana'a. Welcome to the programme. What do you make of a Yemeni woman being recognised?
Hi, everybody. It's a new era for the Yemeni women. This prize will make us believe more in our principles. This country is repressing women, but still, it's the first Arab country that represents to the world a woman who won Nobel Prize. The victory of Ta-wukkul Karman today is a victory for the revolution, the peaceful of the revolution. This woman went out to the street with 200 youth, and we were laughing. We were talking about Ta-wukkul Karman. Come on, there will be no revolution in Yemen. But now we are seeing millions in all provinces, and this revolution is represented itself to the world in 8 months. So we didn't finish a year. Still, we got Nobel Prize. But the regime is ruling Yemen for 33 years, but it didn't brought Yemen anything but wars and all the bad things and corrupt.
So, Fatima, you think it's a possible new beginning for Yemen? It's moving things forward. I appreciate you coming onto World Have Your Say live there on the line from Sana'a. Well, let's quickly speak to Danya, who joins us on the line from Skype in Dubai. Danya, welcome to World Have Your Say. What do you make of these 3 women being named as Nobel Peace Prize winners?
I think it's extremely amazing. I mean, all of these 3 women are coming from developing countries, which is even more of an honor because you can see that there are actually women that do want to do something and that would like to make a positive difference. And Ta-wukkul has been working on, different kinds of peace activities for more than 5 years, and it's just an honor to have another woman, to have all 3 women win the Nobel Peace Prize. And to represent us all.
Well, Danya, do stay with us. You're watching World Have Your Say. We're getting calls coming in from Gambia, India, Somalia, Cambodia. If you want to join the conversation, you can pick up the phone. Call us country code 442070 83 72 72. We'll call you straight back, so the cost of the call will be absolutely minimal. We'll carry on talking in the next few minutes. Welcome back to World Have Your Say. I'm Chloe Tilley. We're discussing the Nobel Peace Prize being awarded to 3 women, 2 from Liberia, 1 from Yemen. So what does this tell us about women and peace within the world? We're joined by Alice Okoku, who is from the advocacy group Women of Africa. Leymah is also with us in Tel Aviv, and we're also joined by Danya, who is in Dubai. But first of all, let's get an email up here from Francis. And Francis emailed to say, it implies implies a strong endorsement from the Nobel Committee for the way the Arab Spring should go, promoting secular societies across the region with equal rights for women. Alice Okoku, do you think that's really their role? Should they be advocating this kind of role?
Yes, because women are, by tradition and nature, peacemakers. But we also know that the UN also has the resolution 1325 that prescribing that women should be allowed to play an effective role, active role in the peace process. But yes, we know that the world, these women may get the Nobel Peace Prize now, but there is so much that needs to happen for women to actually gain their position in the world. Yes, we are happy that the three women has gotten it from Africa in particular, so it's a good day for Africa and good day for African women. But we need the world to recognize that more women are engaging and more women need to be recognized for the role that they play.
And Yasmin, you're in Cairo. Do you think it will make a difference to the way women are regarded in Egypt?
I think to actually have a transformation in the general sense of how women are regarded, because that's a very general statement, because women are regarded differently in different social-economical classes, different neighborhoods, different jobs.
I guess what I was trying to say is, will people take notice of this, or will it just be talked about today and then forgotten? Will it have any fundamental influence on society at all, or just forgotten?
Well, considering that, I think it will not be that forgotten. It is a Nobel Peace Prize, and to have it awarded to three very successful women at the same time from the region, Africa and the Middle East, it is quite something to be said. I mean, the last Nobel Peace Prize that I recall was won in the region was by Baradei, which was in 2005, and people still remember that. And considering the fact that in Pacific with the Arab Spring and with Ta-wukkul Karman and how she has persevered so much, even if it may, at least psychologically, it will carry through, because it shows that her actions are being recognized, and it gives force for others, whether men or women, to realize that there is a force and it's peaceful and we can follow through with it, and there will be recognition. And as you can see, every day there are more and more people that are more involved and more interested in the issues at hand. And so I don't think it's going to die out. Rather, it will. I mean, everything has its moment where it's talked about intensely, and then it sort of filters down. And I think it's going to filter down to something that will still be sustainable. It is a huge accomplishment to have three women at the same time, and I don't see it really dying out. I just see it continuing as another reason to push forward.
Leymah, do you think this will filter down, as Yasmin says?
May I say? Sorry.
Leymah, do you think it will filter down, as Yasmin just said?
Yes, but I don't think that Nobel Peace Prizes in general, makes such a big difference on the ground, really. I mean, there are other forces, at hand that will make a change. I mean, if you look at Liberia now, they are moving into elections soon, and where, possibly Ellen Johnson Sirleaf will have. It will be good for her, but having in mind then that a lot of Liberians cannot read or write, and that the poverty is enormous in Liberia, it might not have that big of an impact on the elections. But I was recently in Liberia, and the Liberian women's movement are now getting together to actually make sure that the elections will be non-violent. And I'm sure that this Nobel Peace Prize to two Liberian women will energize this movement. So in that respect, the prize is of importance.
You're picking up the phone to us in Norway and Liberia. If you want to tweet us, you can use the hashtag WHYS, and you can send us your comment at facebook.com/World Have Your Say. Well, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel has been talking about this. She's welcomed the decision, calling it wise. In a statement, she said, "Women are the big hope for a peaceful world and better conditions, not only in this region, but everywhere." That is what her spokesman has said. And I wonder of you ladies, if you think that women have something different to offer from men. Is it just a cliche to say that women are less inclined to be warmongers, for example? Are they better at pursuing peace, or are we doing women a disservice to make such a generalisation?
Well, I think yeah. I don't know. I think that it's a stereotype to say that women are more peaceful than men. But women have, as they have their roles currently, their social roles in society, they are more peaceful than men at the moment, but we don't know about the future. But, women are human beings, and so are men, and we have faults, and women are also soldiers, and take part in hate speech and so on. So, but today, the experience on the ground is that women are more peaceful than men, but it's not a biological fact for sure.
I'd like to add to that with regards to what I've seen with the Arab Spring, when it comes to mobilization and protests, when that moment normally, at least what I witnessed and experienced during the pre-resignation of Mubarak, is that our gender was not a gender issue when we went out to protest. It was a citizen issue. And yes, maybe I think in this sense we are actually giving tribute to women who are actually putting a lot of effort into the peaceful movement. I'm not saying that they could be more peaceful, they may not, we should do research on that. But what I want to say is that being a woman and being peaceful are not separate nor entwined. It's the fact that the movement calls for peacefulness, it calls for a change. And if you have women that are at the forefront of this, so be it. In the end, we want change, we want peace as the whole world in the end. And you look at the movements that have occurred. And I want to actually trace back to something that was mentioned about whether or not it has an effect. And I think in the end, yes, it's internationally recognized. And what we've seen before is that when you have international support, it may not, it's just the realization that there's someone else there who recognizes your effort, especially when your efforts are not recognized from within your own region or your own country.
Alice, briefly, if you would, because we are coming to the end of this edition, but your thoughts?
Yes. Women are the hope for peace in the world, and African women even more so, because Africa has become the continent where there is so much negative imaging of women. It is true that peace is, there is a lot of stereotyping of saying that the women are the victim of war, they are the vulnerable ones. But yet, the truth is, the hope for peace, world peace, rests with women. That's why Women of Africa is working to raise the profile of African women. Because once the women, the profile is raised, then of course violence will also come down. If we say that violence against women is on the rise, then it is also true that women will bring the peace.
Alice, I'm going to have to jump in there because Mahfouz, who is part of the World Have Your Say team, is over at the news desk at Bush House and is going to bring us lots of the comment which has been coming into us.
Yes, just in the last few minutes we've got calls from Afghanistan, Sudan, Malaysia, Nigeria, Pakistan. Most of you are congratulating the three women who have won the Nobel Peace Prize, but some of you are pointing out that the countries that these women come from itself is an accomplishment. And Muhammad called in from India to say that this is a symbol of women's liberation. Barnabas in Tema says on Facebook, I'm proud of you, daughters of Africa. Nadine differs, though, on Facebook. She goes on to say, I was in Liberia last year and it still has one of the highest rates of rape in the world, so I don't think so. And as always, you can get in touch using the hashtag that you see on the screen now.
Mahfouz, thank you very much. Thank you to all of our guests, to Alice, to Yasmin, to Lena and to Danya. We'll carry on discussing the influence of Steve Jobs and the Apple empire after the latest BBC World News. I'm Chloe Tilley. Welcome to World Have Your Say. President Obama said quite simply he changed the world. Social media and Twitter in particular went into meltdown at the announcement that Steve Jobs had died. He was, of course, the founder and former CEO of Apple. At one point, TrendsMap showed the hashtag Steve Jobs covering the entire globe. So how has this luxury, aspirational brand touched your life? Has it changed it beyond all recognition, or is it firmly beyond your reach and unaffordable? We want your thoughts on that, and also where the next generation of global entrepreneurs will come from. Well, all of the contact details are on the screen throughout the programme as ever. Welcome to the conversation. Well, guests are ready to speak with us in Lagos, Islamabad and California. But first, let's get right up to date with the main news. This year's Nobel Peace Prize has been won by 3 women, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Leymah Gbowee of Liberia and Ta-wukkul Karman of Yemen. It's recognition of their non-violent struggle for the safety of women and women's rights. Forces loyal to Libya's transitional government have taken much of the city of Sirte. The conflict in Colonel Gaddafi's hometown has now become house to house. Sustained tank and mortar fire has targeted the centre of the city. On the 10th anniversary of the US-led invasion of Afghanistan, President Karzai has told the BBC there's been a failure to provide security for his country's people. The credit rating agency Moody's has downgraded 12 British banks because of a change in government policy which makes a bailout less likely in a crisis. 9 Portuguese banks have also been downgraded over concerns about loans to their own governments. In South Africa, Archbishop Desmond Tutu has celebrated his 80th birthday. Crowds gathered outside the Anglican Cathedral in Cape Town to try and catch a glimpse of him. Among those attending the service of Thanksgiving was the Deputy President, the wife of the former President Nelson Mandela, and the rock star Bono. Well, thank you for being with us here on World Have Your Say. We're going to discuss for the next 30 minutes the impact that Steve Jobs has had on the world, his personal influence on Apple, how Apple has touched your life or indeed is unaffordable, is out of your reach. We're joined by a number of people to get the conversation started. Sim joins us on the line from Lagos. He is CEO of a huge e-commerce website in Nigeria. He's in Lagos. Cameron is a blogger. He is in Islamabad. And Jimmy is a CEO. He was inspired by Steve Jobs. He joins us on Skype from California. Welcome all of you to World Have Your Say. It probably makes sense to start with you, Jimmy. You say you were inspired by Steve Jobs. Just explain a little bit more about that.
Yes, well, when I was a student at University of Michigan, we had a lot of Apple computers on campus. And that's, I was, majoring in electrical engineering back then. But because of the Apple computer, it kind of inspired me to kind of switch my concentration to software development. I think the user experience that Steve Jobs brought to our campus, really inspired me to become a software engineer.
Obviously, you're in California, a part of the world that has been hugely influenced by Apple. But if we talk to Sim, who's in Lagos, tell us, what's the impact been in Nigeria? Is everybody able to access what to many people are luxury products?
No, I wouldn't say so at all. I think in terms of consumer devices being sold, I think you'd find that really in the urban areas of Abuja and Lagos. And you would really see much more pervasive use of the Apple MP3 players like the iPods. The iPhones and the iPads have just started to find their way into Nigeria, and you're seeing them increasingly. And I think that was largely driven by the Apple ecosystem not being available to Nigerians, which changed just 2 months ago. So you can buy apps from the Apple ecosystem now with a locally issued debit card. And so that's changed things quite a bit. But I think to really see the impact of Apple in Nigeria, you have to look beyond the products that they sell. There are other devices being sold here, the BlackBerry RIM ecosystem, the Android ecosystem, and all of these were, in my opinion, inspired by Steve Jobs and the company that he led, Apple. So I would say, yes, there's been a huge impact here in Nigeria.
Well, Sim, as you talk, we see pictures of all of the tributes that have been going on around the world to Steve Jobs. Yesterday, I was outside the Apple store in London's Covent Garden. So many people milling around, leaving candles, leaving bouquets of flowers. And the trend seems to be many people taking a bite out of an apple and leaving it outside, which is something that we witnessed yesterday. Cameron, you're a blogger. You're in Islamabad. Same question, really, that I said to Sim. What influence has it had in Pakistan? Is Apple a divisive brand in many ways?
Apple's products are pretty expensive in Pakistan and they are out of reach for most of the population, but they still enjoy a very high demand, especially in the niche market. Every other kid you see going to a college or university in Islamabad or Lahore or other major cities, he'll be carrying an iPhone or an iPod. And interestingly, all of them are using their phones illegally, in a manner of speaking, because these phones were initially sold in countries like US and UK, and they were sold along with contracts which tied them to carriers like AT&T, and then they were jailbroken and unlocked, and then they were imported into Pakistan and sold on the streets for heavy amounts. And people still bought them like crazy, and this is where Steve shines as a marketing genius, because even in countries like Bangladesh and India and Pakistan, which do not fare much in Apple's original plans, Apple does not even have its official stores in Pakistan. Even in these countries, Apple is still making millions of dollars of profit by indirectly selling their hardware.
Well, Sim, Cameron and Jimmy, I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this post which has gone on our Facebook page. If you want to do the same, facebook.com/world have your say. Phil says, why should I really care about Mr. Steve Jobs? So he was a sharp designer who made well-off people in the first world go consumer nuts about his products. What's all this about his contribution to humanity? Jimmy, fair point?
Well, I think, Steve Jobs' contribution is not just his invention, but his ability to bring some of these inventions to the masses. The earlier conversation about, in different parts of the world, using Apple computers or Apple's products. And I was in China last week, and one of the people, foreigners there, actually asked me, how come there are so, with such a low income in China, we are seeing so many people using iPhones on the street, and it's that user experience and all those innovative thoughts that Steve Jobs was able to bring to the masses. Some of those products that really change how we use a lot of different gadgets, and that's his greatest achievement from my perspective.
But I'd like to disagree with him that he created products for the masses, because Steve's products weren't really for everyone. They targeted a pretty niche market, and in that regard, he's kind of like a fashion designer, because even fashion, it doesn't make much sense to probably most of the population. Even the prices are very high, but even fashion dresses, they sell and they create profit and they create business. And this is where Steve strikes me as a very well-versed businessman. He was a great CEO, but he didn't create, anything for the masses. His products, they were very expensive to be out of reach for most of the people.
Wherever you're watching around the world, you can pick up the phone. You can call us, country code 4420 70 83 72 72. You can tweet us using the hashtag WHYS. Cameron, as you were speaking there about Steve Jobs being a marketing man, we were seeing the pictures of him at the launch of various different Apple products. And I wonder, each of you, what you think the difference will be for the company if it can carry on being as successful without Steve Jobs.
Well, this is Simbi. I think you definitely have. I don't think there's as much institutional risk to Apple. I think with Steve's passing, a product map had been. I would imagine a product map really going into years has been laid out. I think his DNA at this point pervades the company, and I think the ecosystem that he's created is already sort of in full march. No doubt, if he had lived a few more decades, we would have seen much more brilliant sort of innovation come out of this individual. But I think the stock market kind of speaks to Apple's future. With his passing, the Apple share price lost about 2% or so, and I think that's an accurate gauge of the future of the company. I think the future of Apple is very bright.
Well, Apple have definitely lost a very charismatic leader, but the point here is that he still wasn't working, full-time with Apple. He had already retired, and they had plans in place to replace him, and Apple still is surrounded by very talented and very hardworking people and very visionary people. And this is why, because I don't see Apple losing much ground in the high-tech devices market, and they'll still be able to, put out some great devices in future.
Jimmy, you were trying to get involved.
Yeah, the first time that Steve left Apple when he was quite young. He was kind of ousted and wasn't really prepared. Wasn't really preparing Apple for his absence. But this time, he did, know that he was eventually going to leave Apple. So I think he was preparing Apple's culture to continue his legacy. And so I would say, there's a big difference when he left Apple the first time. And actually, there was quite a period of time that Apple wasn't very innovative. But this time, in the past few years, whether he was actively involved or not actively involved, we continue to see Apple coming out with great products. And so I think he has already instilled this innovative spirit throughout the culture of Apple.
Lots of you getting in touch with us from Canada, South Africa, Iraq, Libya, and lots of you in Nigeria. Evans on Facebook perhaps sums up what many of you are saying. The death of Steve Jobs is very sad indeed. The world of technology has lost a great man and a great talent. You can keep your calls, your texts, and your tweets coming into us. We'll take a quick break and then we'll carry on talking. Welcome back to World Have Your Say. I'm Chloe Tilley. We're discussing the influence of Steve Jobs and indeed Apple and the global influence and indeed where the next set of global entrepreneurs will come from. Still with us is Sim, who is in Lagos, Cameron, who is in Islamabad, and Jonathan now joins us from California. But first, let's go straight over to Mahfouz, who's at the World Have Your Say news desk live at Bush House in London. Mahfouz, tell us what comments we're getting.
Just in the last few minutes, we've got calls from Algeria, Japan, Hong Kong, Bahrain. Most of you are paying tribute to the life and work of Steve Jobs. Some of you are doubtful, though, whether the technology company he founded, Apple, will remain the same without him. Sean in Pennsylvania in the US says he got us to conceive computers and electronics as personal and expressive, rather than as mundane, utilitarian and bureaucratic. Ji Haoling in China says Steve Jobs is a human being. He's not a god, but he became a legend. Hamza in Kano, Nigeria says he is what Apple is now and will always remain so. Vladimir in Moncado told BBC Mundo, a genius. Thanks for inventing the future. And finally, Rodolfo Perez refers to Apple products and simply says, I sad. And as always, you can get in touch using the hashtag that you see on the screen.
Mahfouz, lots of people using the hashtag ISAD yesterday. A top trending, so at one point yesterday, 9 out of the 10 top trending tweets worldwide were about Steve Jobs. If you want to pick up the phone, there's a few minutes of the programme left. You can call us, country code 44 20 70 83 72 72. Let's bring in this comment from Reginald, who's posted on our Facebook page. New America is afraid to take risks. The cautiousness of the new age is heart-wrenching. Where are the Steve Jobs of our time? Well, let's throw that straight over to Jonathan, who joins us from California. Now, Jonathan was actually at that now renowned speech made by Steve Jobs at Stanford University back in 2005. If you Google it or go onto YouTube, you can watch it. And also, you were an intern at Apple. Jonathan, what do you make of that comment there?
Well, I mean, I think Steve Jobs' impact on Apple, it will remain for a very long time. I mean, at least in the near term, I don't think it's going to affect its products or how it produces things. The difficulty will be Steve was such a visionary. He looked out 5, 10 years in the future and could describe very crisply and accurately what the world is going to be like and what people would want and how products would interact. And so it's that really long-term visionary skill that he had that Apple will now miss, and I think will be hard to maintain.
And elsewhere across the world, do you think America can produce the next Steve Jobs, or do you think that might turn maybe to India or China?
There's something very unique about the culture here in California and in Silicon Valley. It's kind of got a magic with a combination of the universities, the startup atmosphere, the constant churn of new companies. Many of the entrepreneurs that I see kind of to my left and my right as we start companies are from the places you just mentioned. India and China are both, of course, huge places for that. But I think America is a land of innovation, a land of changing what came before, and it's very hard to reproduce that.
Jimmy is still with us. Jimmy, what do you make of this? Do you think that the next global entrepreneurs will be from the likes of China and India?
I think it's the in China, there are a lot of entrepreneurs popping up, and people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates are very inspirational to the new generation of entrepreneurs in China, and so I think there is definitely a possibility, but like Jonathan said, I think the U.S. is the place that people are a lot more willing to take risk, and that risk taking that Steve Jobs has often done is what makes great entrepreneurs, and that I think it makes U.S. especially California a very unique place for that.
Jimmy, thank you for speaking to us live from California. Let's put that question also to Cameron, who is in Islamabad. We've heard a lot about Silicon Valley, talk about India, China. Where do you think the next global entrepreneur will be coming from?
Well, first of all, I would like to clarify something, that most of the things Steve was credited with inventing weren't actually invented by him. I mean, the GUIs were there before Mac, the touch phones were there before iPhone. What Steve did was he took these concepts and these ideas, he polished them, and he made them beautiful for the masses. And this is where he is a great businessman. And great businessmen, they can come up from anywhere. They can come up from any country. And the point is that in the coming decades, we'll see people like Steve Jobs, because the software economy is booming in everywhere in developing countries, and we'll definitely see people like him from other places other than the US.
Sim in Lagos, what's your view?
No, I agree with that. I think in the world today, the key to creativity and innovation is to be able to harness resources from all kinds of different places and put it together. I think it's correct that Steve Jobs didn't invent the mouse, or he didn't invent the code that went into the first laser printer, but he gave those things to us. I think the other thing about innovation that's really interesting is that many times the most profound innovations are born of resource constraints, and in some of these developing regions like Africa and Asia and China, there are great resource constraints, and this breeds profound innovation. I'll give you an example, just more close to my home. In Africa was really the birthplace of mass use of mobile payments, and that came out of here. Now, as to the question as to where the next Steve Jobs would come from, I think it's as likely to be outside of Silicon Valley as inside Silicon Valley. But I think you've definitely seen sort of a democratization of innovation. Could be from anywhere.
Sim, I'm going to jump in at that point because we're running out of time, but thank you so much for speaking to us. Thank you also to Jonathan and to Cameron in Islamabad. That's all we've got time for, but we will be back at 18:30 GMT to take more of your calls. You can, of course, keep the conversation going until then at facebook.com/World Have Your Say.
Na szybki tygretowy.